Okay, I think we're going to get started. The Accreditation Committee would like to welcome all of you. I know it was an early day at 7 o'clock, and you're probably tired by now. We've got a few snacks over here, but we're happy to have you share with us the on-site auditing process, and we hope that the workshop will be helpful to you. So I'm Carolyn Hurley. I'm one of the chairs of the Accreditation Committee, and I'm going to just start by giving you a quick overview of the on-site audit process. The slides I'm going to show are in your packet, so each of you should have a packet from the table, and we'll be covering the material from the packet. Okay, so when does WMDA perform an on-site audit? Initially, when a registry has not been qualified or accredited, they would apply for qualification. Let's see if I can get the, okay, they would apply for qualification and basically submit a package of documents. And once approved for qualification, they would have 5 years at this status. At the end of 5 years, they would apply for accreditation, and again, they would submit a package of documents addressing how they address the standards, and in addition, we would perform an on-site audit. So this is performed at the time that the registry is moving from qualification to accreditation. The accreditation is good for 4 years, and after 4 years, the registry would renew that accreditation, and we would do a document review, but it would be a limited set of documents that you would need to submit, and we would also do an on-site audit. So this kind of process of document review and on-site audits would go on every 4 years. So the timing of the on-site audit during the review is that you would submit your application package. The review team of 2 or 3 individuals would review your documents. Within a month, they would summarize their analysis of the documents and would potentially request additional information if you were missing something they needed to see. And then you would have about a month or so to respond to that additional information, but we've been finding usually that the registry can respond during the on-site audit. So after the request for more information is received, there'll be an on-site audit, and the additional information often is addressed at that time. So after the on-site audit, the review team drafts the final report, makes a recommendation to the Accreditation Committee, and the Accreditation Committee makes a decision as to whether to approve or disapprove accreditation. So the purpose of an on-site audit is to determine whether the registry is compliant with WMDA standards by observing the work practices of the registry as they go about their day-to-day work, and we'll be questioning staff and reviewing supporting documentation. So we'll review donor files for current searches. We'll review requests for verification typing and cord blood typing requests. We'll review what's going on related to workups at the time the on-site visit is performed. We'll look at documentation about collections, about cord blood shipment, and follow-up of donors. And if you audit other entities that you work with, we'll review those audits of those associated entities. So if you audit your donor centers, then the review team will look at an audit report from a donor center. So not only are we trying to observe whether you're compliant with WMDA standards in practice, but we're also hoping to exchange information on best practices. So this is actually a two-way street. In one way, the reviewer says, well, we do it like this, and maybe this will save you some time. Or on the other hand, the registry may say, we do it like this, and the reviewer will say, oh, that's a good idea. I might bring that back. So I think it's an advantage to get information on best practices for both the reviewer and the registry. And the audit plan, or the different steps in the audit, will depend on what tasks are performed by the registry and what files you have on hand. So the schedule is that day one, the reviewers arrive in your city, and they go to their hotel and they develop the plan for the next day. So you're not supposed to take them out for lots of wine or anything that night before. They're supposed to be working and putting together a plan and discussing how they want to structure the audit. So day two, they come to the registry, they meet with the staff as a group to discuss the plan for the day and sign a confidentiality agreement. So that's a short meeting, usually just involving the staff who will be involved in that the auditors will talk to during the day. There'll be a very brief tour of the registry, like a 10-minute tour, whirlwind tour. And then what they'll do is they'll meet with a staff member who, for example, supports international searches. So they'll actually go to the desk of the person who's supports international searches, and they'll talk with that individual. They'll look at what searches are ongoing that day, and they'll go through the search checklist. And so they go group by group, following in order from workup to verification typing to collection and follow-up and so forth. At the end of the day, they meet with the members of the registry to answer any remaining questions, and they go back to the hotel and draft their report. The next day, they come back to the registry and they complete anything they haven't completed the day before and get any further information the registry might want to give them and discuss their findings with the registry. So the series of checklists are here: registry, search, verification, typing, and so forth. And each of these checklists will take about 30 minutes to an hour to complete by chatting with the staff member who supports that particular activity in your registry. At the end is like an hour-and-a-half meeting with the quality manager where we go through serious adverse events, audits of other entities, training records, and so forth. Now, the checklists that will be used and the guidance are provided on a website called Confluence. And this website, which has this particular part of the website, is a public part of the website. Anyone can access it. And on this website, you can, at the bottom, you'll see in the center, you can access the WMDA standards and the checklists that will be used and all the information that the reviewers will be using to complete the audit. And if you have any questions about Confluence, check with the WMDA desk. So the logistical issues the registry needs to deal with related to the on-site visit is, first of all, to advise the WMDA office of a suitable hotel for the reviewers and assist with any visa issues. So the office and the reviewers will coordinate their own travel, but the registry will be asked to suggest a hotel nearby for the reviewers to stay at and so forth. The travel expenses for the reviewers are paid by the office. The registry does not pay anything. On the day of the audit, you could provide transportation from the hotel to the registry and back to the hotel. You should provide a private room at the registry where the two reviewers can discuss their findings among themselves, and a modest lunch served on site in the private room. So you're not going to have lunch with them. You're going to provide a lunch of sandwiches or something, and they're going to eat their lunch while they work on completing their documents and so forth. After the audit is complete, you certainly can offer to take them out to dinner or any other kind of social thing you want, but we really don't want anything to interfere with the process of the audit. So today's workshop, we're going to next do a play, which is going to be an example of an audit of the international search process using the search checklist, which is in the packet you've received, and you should pull that out. And then after that, we're going to do a series of round tables where we're going to practice being auditors. And so you will be the auditor, and one person from the accreditation committee at your table will be the registry and will answer your questions. So with that, I'm going to introduce Pam Robinette and the play.
righty, good afternoon. So during this part of our workshop today, you'll be treated to some performances by your colleagues who will demonstrate to you an example of a bad audit first, followed by a good audit, so that you have an idea of what to avoid and what to strive for. So not only is this a workshop to help teach people how to be a good auditor, but it will give you a good idea as a registry of what to expect when you do become audited. So first, I would like to introduce our actors for the Bad Auditor skit. We star Martin McGregor, we welcome the movie stars, and Bettina Sorensen. So Bettina will represent the registry being audited, and Martin will be our bad auditor. So remember, don't model your behavior after Martin. All right? So they'll go through, and they're going to be going through a sample search checklist. So as Carolyn mentioned, in your packet, there's many things in your package. You have copies of the slides and so on. But there's a search checklist, and there's a guidance to the checklist. So if you like, you can follow along a little bit or look at it afterwards just to say, now I see what kinds of questions Martin is going to be asking, what he's looking for as he's performing the audit. Okay, take it away.
Hi, I'm from a very experienced registry, and I'd really like to learn what it is you do and to provide you with some tips on how your registry might be able to do things better. So, can you tell me what your name is?
Bettina Sorensen.
Okay. Tell me about your responsibilities and how long you've worked here.
Well, I'm an international search coordinator, and I've been here for about 2 years. I started out as a national coordinator, and then last year I moved into the international search coordinator job. I'm a biologist by training.
Okay. Hang on. Just let me see where I've got to write this down. Hang on. Okay, sorry about that. Right. I hope the questions I ask make sense. My English isn't very good, and but we're required to conduct the audit in English.
Okay.
Okay. So, what happens when you get a search request from another country?
Well, we get an email with a request.
And are you assigned to receive requests from just certain countries, or do you take turns with other coordinators?
There's only one international search coordinator, and that's me. So all the search requests come into my personal email account.
Wow, that must make you really, really busy. I suppose it's difficult to get a holiday as well, really, around here, and it's sort of only a small number of staff. Mind you, I've heard the Independence Day holiday is really quite good fun around here, sort of. So what happens when you're out of the office?
My manager, the registry director, fills in for me, and I give her my password.
Well, I really think you should think about a shared email account, or an out-of-office reply. That's what we do, and it works really great.
Oh, okay.
So after you've run the search, how do you get the results, and how do you send it back to the requesting registry?
I type in the patient name, date of birth, gender, and diagnosis, and then we create a patient file. And then I type in the HLA type and press submit, and then our system produces a search report in a PDF format. And this is saved in an electronic file, and then I forward this PDF search report to the requesting registry by email.
So, let me just get it clear. Is this the same process to look for a cord blood unit in your registry? Do you do cord bloods?
Yes, we do, and the search report includes both donors and cord blood units. The donor are listed in the first section, and then the cord bloods in the second section.
Okay. So do you have anything written down that describes what you just told me?
Yes, we have an SOP.
Okay, can you show that to me?
Yes. Here you go. I can log into our document management system, or a special folder on my computer that contains all the SOPs.
Oh, that's good. Can you just show me?
Yeah, here you can see in section 3, there's a PDF icon. I can just show you.
Mm-hmm.
You can see a PDF icon with the patient's name and ID number. And if I click on it, then I open the document.
Okay. Are you sure that's the most updated version?
Well, I have to log onto our document management system to get the SOP, so I have to rely on the system that it only shows me the most current version. I'm not allowed to print them, these to reference them or to save them on my computer desktop.
Okay, so is there training for this SOP?
Yes.
Right. I must admit, at my registry we have online training, and I think that's by far the best way of doing it. So what do you do here?
Most of these documents we have to document that we have read them, and then we almost always discuss new SOPs at our weekly staff meeting, where we talk about what has been changed, and then our quality manager gives us about 2 weeks to read the SOP and send an email once we've read it.
Okay, I see I need to see a sample search report. Can you show me a sample search report for an international patient?
You mean one that I emailed to registry? Because a lot of our searches to European registries are sent by MDES, so I can't show you one of those.
Yeah, I suppose so. An email report then.
Yeah, okay. So...
Okay, so this looks like, this is the date the search request arrived, and this is the date that the search report was run.
Yes.
And you sent this report by email?
Yes.
Okay, you need to show me the email message that shows what day you sent it.
Okay, just a moment. Yeah. Yeah, here it is, October 22nd.
Okay, great. That's so. Do you do any monitoring of the searches?
What do you mean by monitoring?
Well, for example, does anybody look at searches that haven't had a request, like a typing request or a CT request after preliminary search?
Yes. Not a person, but our system sends me a message if 30 days has passed with no order. I can then send that message or modify it if I want to remind the registry that no services have been ordered and that I can rerun the search if they want.
Okay, can you show me a sample of one of those messages?
Yes. Here's one I sent last month to the Middle Eastern registry.
Okay, so what kind of forms can you receive search requests on?
Well, we have our own preliminary form, or we accept the WMDA forms, and most of the time we can use a form that another registry has.
Okay, so what form do you normally receive from my registry?
We usually receive it on a WMDA form.
Oh, right, okay. And how do you know if the registry or the transplant centre is allowed to submit a search?
Well, I have a list on my desk that tells me which registries and which transplant centres are allowed to submit a search. And if a registry isn't on this list, I have to ask the registry director for approval. I think she has a questionnaire that asks about the accreditation status of the center or registry.
Have you ever received any search requests from the Arctic registry? I inspected them last year and they were terrible. Their paperwork was awful.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. What happens if you get a search request and it's missing key information? Or it has handwritten information that you can't read, faxes or faxes? I've seen that happen a lot, especially from the Arctic registry.
I have to send an email to the requester and ask them to resend or rewrite the information. I keep those requests in a separate email folder while I'm waiting for a response. On Wednesdays, I send another email if I haven't heard back from them.
And what's the minimum amount of information you need on a search request?
That is the patient name, the family name and first name, date of birth, gender, and diagnosis.
And what happens if there are several people with the same name? Is your last name common?
Well, after I enter the patient's name, there's a pop-up box that shows me all of the patients already in the system with an ID number, and it shows me their date of birth, gender, diagnosis, and last activity date. I can either choose a patient from that list, or I can click on Create New Patient File button, and the system gives me a new patient ID.
All right. Okay. So can you customize the search reports according to the HLA match criteria that the Transplant Centre has sent in, or the requesting registry? I think it's really important that you're able to customize that search.
No, our system only provides reports for 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 8 out of 8, or 7 out of 8 donors, and 8 out of 8, 7 out of 8, 6 out of 6, or 5 out of 6 cord blood units. The best matches are listed first, then mismatches.
Okay. So where's the authorization signature from an HLA specialist to say the report's satisfactory?
We only require authorization from a HLA specialist when looking for mismatches, as our search algorithm has been validated by a team from the HLA lab.
Oh, no. Hang on. Standard 6.01 requires that every search must be authorized by an HLA specialist. I'm afraid you're not compliant. Hang on, just while I write that down.
Oh.
So, how many searches do you figure to do in a day?
Well, I usually get about 12 new searches each day, but it can vary from 5 to 25. I don't know what makes some days so busy. I also keep track of the typing and high-resolution requests. I'd say that I get about 3 or 5 of those per day.
So, what happens on a really busy day?
Well, I can ask for help from one of our domestic coordinators, at least for the entry of the searches. I can also ask the registry manager for help.
So, do the domestic coordinators have to read the SOP on cert entry?
Yes, I'm pretty sure. I remember having to read it when I was a domestic coordinator.
Okay, what about days you're out sick or on holiday? Who covers for you?
The registry director and the most experienced domestic coordinator split my work. Sometimes search results don't get sent out for a day or two when someone else is covering my desk.
And is that the same process for national patients and international patients?
It was until a year ago when we put in a new computer system.
Oh, new computer system, yeah, wonderful. Switching to a new computer system is absolutely terrible. I never forget when our registry did that 5 years ago. Oh. Sorry, where were we?
Yes. Last year that we introduced this new computer system for the transplant centers in our country to use. They can enter the patient name and diagnosis and then the other information on our preliminary search form and get the search result right there. Until we had that system, they had to fax or email a preliminary search form to us.
Okay, let me just see. I think I've got everything. Well, if I don't, I can always come back tomorrow and ask you. Yes, I'm finished. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you. That was very entertaining. So we hope that you were able to pick up on some of these bad practices, not only from the auditor, but there were perhaps a few slips from the registry as well. So, just to review for you, here's some of the things we intended to show you. First of all, a bonus bad practice was our auditor showing up in unprofessional attire. Now, if he's a fan, especially if he's from
30 seconds away from 2 Super Bowl wins.
So, first of all, was his complimentary attire here. But also, I think you could see that the auditor was very arrogant. He said he was from an experienced registry and that he would be giving her tips about how the registry should be run. He was also shuffling his paper. He seemed a little confused about where he should record his information. He made numerous editorial comments, for example, about asking about busy days and national holidays and what happens here on a national holiday. When the registry talked about sharing passwords, he gave unsolicited advice about what they should do. Oh, you should really do this. This is what we do, and we think it's great. He also asked the registry if they listed cord bloods, but he's an auditor. He should know if they list cord bloods or not. So what we're showing here is he's not very prepared, he's not familiar with the checklist, he hasn't read up on what this registry does. There's a little more arrogance thrown in there. He says, at my registry we do this. And you could also hear when he was showing frustration. He was very frustrated and sighing. And he wasn't very polite. He was saying things like, you need to show me this, instead of, could you please show me? He also made unprofessional remarks, commenting on confusing service and illegible paperwork from the Arctic Registry. He made a remark about what he personally thinks is important about how reports should be customized. And he was also incorrect about his statement about Standard 6.1 requiring each search to be authorized by an HLA specialist. And of course, you also heard his comments about the computer system and its frustrations. So in your packet, you also have a list of the items that the auditor was looking for. I'm sorry, I don't know why this list turned out in gray, so it's very difficult to read perhaps, but it's on your slides. So as you look at the checklist and the guidance, these are the types of things he was asking questions to find these items in the search. So he was looking for a search report that came from an international requester. He was looking for a date on the search report. He was looking to see if the date of the report was within 1 working day of the request. He was looking to see if the report contained the donor age and the donor gender. He was looking if it was anonymous as far as the donor, but also clear about the patient identity. And he was also to take a look to see if the sample search report looked like it had appropriate donors and cords listed on it, and if the documents require dating and signing, if appropriate. So those are things that he's looking for in the search checklist, and you can see on the guidance that there's some sample questions. There's ways that you can ask information from the registry person to understand how they operate. As the auditor is going through a checklist, he or she doesn't have to just exactly read the question the way it's stated. They might be able to figure out how this works by just asking general conversational questions. Now, we also put a few items in the registry response here to let you know about things you should avoid as a registry. So for example, Bettina here offered some extra information that wasn't necessary to say, oh, sometimes search results don't get sent out for a day or two when I'm gone and someone is covering my desk. So remember, as a registry, you don't have to offer extra information. And I think that's difficult because you're trying to be friendly and you're trying to be nice and you try to make sure they understand. But really, you can just limit your information to what they're looking for. So it's very important to not provide extra information. For those of you that are experienced undergoing audits from other accrediting agencies in your country, perhaps you've been coached on this before, but the recommendation is always just to provide the answer they're looking for, nothing more. The other area that we had Bettina provide incorrect information is when he asked who has to read these SOPs, and she said, oh, I think so. But again, if it's a response that you're not sure about, you could say, I'm not sure, and we should ask the quality manager, for example. So this is just an example first of maybe some poor elements of an audit. But next, we would like to welcome our next actor, and we'll welcome Mats Bengston to come up and show us a good example of an audit. Thank you, Martin. So what you'll see is basically the same kind of questions that we had the first time around. If you want to follow along with the slides, they're also repeated in your packet. But we're going to see a good audit right now. Thank you.
So, hello, my name is Mats Bengston, and I'm here to ask you some question about the search process in your registry. What's your name?
Bettina Sørensen.
Okay, nice meeting you. So could you tell me about your responsibilities and how long you've been working here at the registry?
I'm an international search coordinator, and I've been here for about 2 years. I started out as a national search coordinator, and then last year I moved into the international search coordinator job. I'm a biologist by training.
Okay, great. Just let me know if there is something you don't understand, because neither of us have English as a native language, so sometimes I mess up questions, and please just let me know if you don't understand me.
Okay, yes.
So could you describe the general process that the search from another registry follows?
Well, we get an email with a request.
And you are assigned to receive requests from certain countries, or do you take turns with other coordinators as well?
Well, there's only one international search coordinator, so all the search requests come into my personal email account.
So what happens if you're out of the office?
My manager, the registry director, fills in for me.
And after you run the search, how do you get the results, and how do you send it back to the requesting registry?
Well, I type in the patient name, date of birth, gender, and diagnosis to create a patient file, and then I type in the HLA type and press submit. Our system then produces a search report in a PDF format that I save in an electronic file, and then I forward this PDF file to the registry by email.
Okay. Is this the same process to look for cord blood unit at your registry?
Yes, the search report includes both donors and cord blood units. The donors are listed in the first section and the cord bloods in the second section.
Do you have an SOP that describes what you just told me?
Yes.
Can you show it to me?
Yes.
Okay.
Here you go. I can log into our document management system, or I can log into a special folder on my computer that contains
great.
all.
Where is the part that explains how you send the report to the requesting center?
Here, number 3, a PDF icon with the patient's name and ID number will display on the screen, and I click on it, and then I review the report to ensure results are present and contain potential donors and cords that are compatible with the patient's reported HLA type.
How do you know that this is the most updated version you use?
I have to log into our document management system or into a special folder to get the SOP. I have to rely on the system to only show me the most current version. I'm not allowed to print these to reference them or save them on my computer desktop.
Is that training for this SOP?
Yes.
What kind of training?
Most of these we have to document that we have read it. We almost always discuss new SOPs at our weekly staff meeting too, where we talk about the changes. Our quality manager gives us 2 weeks to read the SOP and send an email once we read it.
Okay. Can you show me a sample of a search report that been sent out recently?
You mean one that I emailed to a registry, because a lot of our searches to European registries are sent by MDIS, so I can't show you those.
Yeah, that would be fine
Okay.
if you can show one of those.
Yeah. So this looks.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
So this looks like the date the search request arrived, and this is the date the search report was run.
Yes. Yes.
Was it sent by email?
Yes.
Can you show me the email message?
Yes. Just a moment. So here, October 22nd.
Okay, so it's correct then that it's elapsed 10 days.
Yes.
Is it typical that you send out the responses more than 1 day between you receive the request and send the report?
Yes.
Okay. So do you do any monitoring of your searches?
What do you mean by monitoring?
Well, for example, does anyone look at searches that haven't had a request, like a typing request or CT request, after the preliminary search?
Oh yes, not a person, but our system sends me a message if 30 days has passed with no order. I can then send that message or modify it if I want, to remind the registry that no services have been ordered, and that I can rerun the search if they want.
Can you show me an example of those messages?
Sure. Yep. Here's one I sent yesterday to the Middle Eastern registry.
Okay, that's good. So what kind of forms can you receive for search request on?
Well, we have our own preliminary search form, or we accept the WMDA forms, and most of the time we can use a form that another registry has.
How do you know if the registry or transplant center is actually allowed to submit searches?
I have a list at my desk that tells me which registry and which transplant centers are allowed to submit a search. And if a registry or center isn't on that list, I have to ask the registry director for approval. I think she has a questionnaire that asks about the accreditation status of the center or registry.
Okay, so what happens if you get a search request with missing key information or has handwritten information that is difficult to read?
I have to send an email to the requester and ask them to resend or rewrite the information. I keep those requests in a separate email folder while I'm waiting for a response. On Wednesday, I send another email if I haven't heard back from them.
Okay, so what is the minimum amount of information that you request to run a search?
Patient name, family name, and first name, date of birth, gender, and diagnosis.
Okay, so what happens if there are several people with the same name?
After I enter the patient's name, there's a pop-up box that shows me all the patients already in the system with an ID number, and it shows me the date of birth, gender, diagnosis, and last activity date. I can either choose a patient from that list, or I can click on the Create New Patient File button, and the system gives me a new patient ID.
Bettina, can you customize the search reports according to the HLA match criteria of the transplant center or requesting registry?
No, our system only provides reports for 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 8 out of 8 or 7 out of 8 donors, and 8 out of 8, 7 out of 8, 6 out of 6, or 5 out of 6 cord blood units. And then the best matches are listed first, then the mismatches.
So how many searches do you figure you do in a day?
Well, I usually get about 12 new searches each day, but it can vary from 5 to 25. I don't know what makes some days so busy. I also keep track of typing and high resolution requests. I'd say that I get about 3 to 5 of those per day.
So what happens on a really busy day?
Well, I can ask for help from one of the domestic coordinators, at least for the entry of searches. I can also ask the registry manager for help.
Do the domestic coordinators have to read the SOP on search entry?
Yes, I am pretty sure. I remember having to read it when I was a domestic coordinator, but our quality manager could tell you for certain.
So what about the days that you're out sick or on holiday? Who covers for you?
The registry director and the most experienced domestic coordinator split my work. Sometimes search results don't get sent out for a day or two when someone else is covering my desk.
Is it the same process for national patients and international patients?
It was until a year ago when we put in a new computer system that the transplant centers in our country can use. They can enter the patient name and diagnosis and the other information on our preliminary search form and get the search results right there. Until we had that system, they had to email or fax a preliminary search form to us.
Okay, let's see. I think I have everything. Yes, I'm finished. Thank you so much, Bettina. I hope I haven't taken too much of your time.
No problem. My pleasure.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So thank you again. That was wonderful. Just to review some of the things that were different from our first example was Mats was very nice. He introduced himself. He made the registry staff person feel comfortable. He noted the delay. You remember when he asked about, does it typically take this long to send a request? So he noted it, but didn't make an editorial comment. So he made sure if he was going to note something that could be out of compliance, he asked a clarifying question. He knew which checklist he was using. He was very comfortable with writing down his answers. He was very pleasant. He offered to clarify questions, and he didn't show any signs of frustration. So he was really a model auditor. Thank you. And a review of the good practice by our registry representative, Bettina. It was very good. She answered questions, but didn't over-explain. She didn't provide extra information that wasn't necessary. She was able to find the SOP very easily. And when there was an answer she wasn't sure about, she recommended that the quality manager be consulted. So that concludes our skit to show you examples of good and bad authors. So please help me thank our actors for going through a sample audit. Thank you very much. Okay. So we're now ready for the last part of our workshop, and this is where you all get to practice being an auditor. On the table, there is one copy of a stack of files called the VT verification typing requests. So one file that says donor verification typing or CT requests. And then there's another copy called donor follow-up files. Okay. So we now have an hour for you to practice going through this. So if you're at a small table, maybe up here, you can join some of the other tables, so it might be a little bit easier for you to do this. But your job now is to look through. We'll give you a few minutes first. There's a moderator at each table who represents the accreditation committee. So they'll help you through this exercise as well. But basically, this packet is a sample of the paperwork that you would be showing to an auditor. So on the donor verification typing request, these are samples of the type of information you're going to show to the auditor. So you'll want to all read through this a little bit first, just so you can familiarize yourself with all of the different paperwork. We realize that it's not the same paperwork you would use at your own registry. So take a look first to see if you understand what's in the packet. And then we'll split this time so that for the first half of this exercise, you'll spend time looking at the verification typing request. And the last half of the session, we'll look at donor follow-up. Now, in the other packets that you received, each of you has a copy of the checklist for verification typing and the guidance. So you can use that checklist. It's your own copy. Use it with a pen. Take a look at it and pretend now that you're the auditor and you've got all of these questions that you need to be able to ask of the registry. Okay? So this is I know I just gave you multiple instructions. So we'll review. First is read through the packet, at least the CT packet first. Let's read through that first. Make sure you understand an idea of what kinds of paperwork you have in front of you. After a few minutes of review, your table will take turns asking questions of your moderator, of your registry representative, because you're going to pretend that you're doing the audit, and the person being audited will answer some questions. Then in about 10 or 15 minutes, we'll switch over to the donor follow-up checklist, and you'll have a chance at going through the checklist for donor follow-up. Okay? Are there any questions on this part? Not yet? Okay. All right. It's time to begin and start reading through your VT-CT packet.